Trying to get rid of all of the people off my screen and all of that. Okay, I think I'm all good. All right. Well, thank you for those of you that were able to join us today, and otherwise those watching the recording later on. Today, my colleague and good friend Jamie Schessler and I, Mary Foltz, are going to present on the Oklahoma EPSCoR Water Research Mentorship Program that we established last year. Hard to believe. It's only been a year, but we've already managed to have 2 cohorts through this. So, I wanted to start with the acknowledgements. So this has been funded through Oklahoma EPSCoR through the S3OK project. The funding came through last year actually it was 2 years ago now, for our first cohort to happen in the spring of 2024. And then we were able to get that funding extended through the next academic year. And it all started with Valerie Phillips, who's pictured here with me and Jamie. We were having a conversation and we saw a need in the state for mentorship and collaboration between all of our various institutions, especially trying to get some of the regional universities more connected to research opportunities that we are afforded at some of the land grant institutions and other R1 institutions in the state. And so we just wanted to have more connections, which is kind of what the purpose of the Oklahoma EPSCoR S3OK project was. And that's one of the things that I loved being a part of that team, was how I got to connect with people that weren't just at OSU, which is where I am, but all over the state. And so we got funding for this program and we're hoping to continue it moving forward. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start with the mentorship program goals that Jamie and I established, I guess, a year and a half ago now. The first goal was just building that sense of community and belonging, and we decided we wanted to have a theme. At first, we toyed with the idea of STEM because that's the area that both of us are in, but we decided we could go a little bit broader, but also a little bit more narrow. So we chose water research and education. So that opened it up outside of STEM as well. But basically anybody who can find some sort of connection to water, which we feel almost anybody can. And so we hoped that that would be quite inclusive, but also give us a focus in something that we really care about, which is water research. And then the second goal was just to help provide the connections and resources so that people can get involved with water research and also education. So because it's based out of universities and university programs, students can learn more about graduate programs, undergraduate programs that might provide the educational pathway to get involved in water, careers and fields. And then also, ideally, in the future, we'll have more industry partners to make that further connection as they continue their work beyond university. And then finally, just trying to get people to feel like they are capable of doing research. And whenever Jamie shares the reflections towards the end, we hope that we will show how that program goal manifested. So the structure of this program originally was going to be just like any other mentorship program where you have a mentor and a mentee. And so we had people volunteer and sign up as either a mentor or a mentee. But the interesting thing about the first cohort and the structure of it is that we almost had 3 tiers kind of establish themselves. And so rather than having the traditional mentor and mentee, instead we established the traditional mentee, but then we had a lead mentor and an intermediate mentor. And so we called these the mentorship trios. At first, the terminology was MM, mentor, mentee, and we called them the MM meetings, but then these trios kind of naturally formed, and now we call them trio meetings. And so the idea behind this is that instead of having someone who is like the leader and someone who is learning, it's more a group of people that are all learning together and holding each other accountable. And so, in most cases, the lead mentor was a faculty member or a senior graduate student. Intermediate mentor was typically a graduate student or a senior undergraduate student. And then the mentees were typically undergrads or high school students. There were exceptions to these rules, but that's typically how they came about. And pictured here is one of our trios from the first cohort, and Cheyenne is in this call. So it's really great to see how these people have been able to stay connected throughout this program. So the very first cohort was in spring 2024, and we had a abbreviated program that was just one semester long. And so it alternated every other week with a large cohort meeting and then what we called the MM meeting, the mentor-mentee, which was actually a trio meeting, but we changed the terminology later. And so you'd have this large cohort meeting over Zoom where everyone would be there and we'd have some sort of discussion on a professional development topic. And you can see some of those here, and I will go into those in the following slides. And then the trios would meet and talk about that topic and complete an activity. So typically the activity is related to whatever the overarching topic is, and I'll speak about specific activities in the following slides. Um, the thing that we observed from the first year to the second year is that it was so fast paced. It felt like we were constantly doing mentorship. And that was great because we felt really connected, but it was also more of a time commitment. And I know that some participants pulled back a little bit because they weren't expecting that much of a time commitment. And so, what we hope to do the second year was establish a year-long program. And so you can see that we started in November rather than in January. And so we were able to space it out so it was more like every other week was either a large cohort event or a trio meeting. We kept similar topics and adjusted others based on feedback from the previous year, and I'll be going into some of those in detail. Something that we did observe whenever we went to bi-weekly was it felt like it was too spaced out. And so we hope to improve upon that in the future, which is something that Jamie will talk about towards the end. So this is the exciting part for me to look at is some of the data. And I'm really grateful that Val encouraged us to survey the participants to get some of this data because otherwise we wouldn't have known the breakdown, but we know that NSF and others are really curious about the makeup of the participants. So our first cohort was really balanced. I'm not sure how it happened, but it was really awesome how we got so much input and participation from people all over the state. I think a lot of that had to do with Val's recruitment efforts. She has a lot of networks and was able to spread this pretty widely. And we had a longer recruitment period because we really wanted to try to get the word out. And so we waited a lot longer before we started compared to the second year. And so we did have a majority from land grant or R1 institutions, and that would be OSU because that's where Jamie and I are from, and we encouraged everybody here to participate. But we did get some buy-in from regional universities. That's how we met Cheyenne, community college. That's how we met Brenda Witt. And then one minority serving institution up in the Panhandle. They didn't participate in the second year, but we did have them participate in the first year. And then academic status was also pretty balanced. We had a large group of faculty serving as the lead mentors, a lot of graduate students, mostly master's students. They also happen to be me and Jamie's graduate students that we told you are going to participate in this. And I see some of them are in the call today, so that's awesome. And then some undergraduate students. We did have one person that was somebody working in the professional world and was looking into coming back to school for graduate school. And so that was our other in that instance. So in the second year, we attempted to make this program even broader. We introduced the addition of high school students, so we opened it up to them and tried to network in those areas, but we didn't network as widely as we hoped, and somehow we lost some representation. I think it was because we weren't sure if we were going to have funding in the second year, and so we held off on advertising, and then we had an abbreviated advertisement period. So for the next year, we're really hoping to have a longer advertisement period for this. But um, we had some high school students participate. We had two high schoolers this year. We still had representatives from regional and community colleges, but like I said, a lot fewer. And then we had a lot from OSU, and we did get a few from OU. So that was an improvement, but we're really hoping to get more from OU in the future. And then as far as academic status, this is where it was really a lot more balanced in a way because we did get the introduction of high school students and professionals. We got a lot more undergrads than the previous year relative to the other areas, and more PhD students rather than master students only. And the interesting thing was we got a lot fewer faculty involvement. And so a lot of those PhD students had to step up and become lead mentors. And I think that that role really worked well for them, and we're going to continue that in the future. Okay. So one thing that we wanted to highlight, and it's really great because some of those folks are on this call today, is that there were several return participants. So here you can see the first cohort on the left, second cohort on the right. We are missing people from the cohorts because not everybody could make it to the in-person event. But that is really the best part of this program is whenever we all get to be together and meet each other for the first time face to face. But fortunately, several of the repeats people were in the both pictures. So I wanted to highlight, obviously, Jamie and I have been staying in this program through it all. We're both from OSU. Nisha Bada was in the program as an intermediate mentor in the first year, and she had a great relationship with her lead mentor, did some guest lectures in her lead mentor's class, talked about her research, which happened to be at her lead mentor's university location. And so she was really excited to participate again, this time as a lead mentor herself, and got to engage with another graduate student and an undergraduate student, which was really awesome. Brenda Witt, she participated in the first and second year, both as lead mentors. And additionally, she brought in a new mentee into the program who actually was my mentee, and he is awesome. She, in between the two cohorts, also did an EPSCoR funded REU with that student, and it's been a great experience working with her. And we have some exciting news about Brenda that Jamie will introduce at the end. Also Cheyenne. So she was in the first year as a lead mentor, was also very involved and had a great experience, brought one of her past students that graduated from her university into the program in the second year, and she was our industry or professional representation in the program. And so that was really cool. And she also, we have a great thing to announce here at the end that Jamie will talk about. Then we have Aria Hansen, and so she's from UCO, and she participated in the first cohort as a mentee, and then went on to do a summer REU with Jamie, and then now is participating as, or in this previous cohort, participated as an intermediate mentor despite being only an undergraduate, but she did an excellent job, and if she decides to come back next year, she would even have the opportunity to be a lead mentor if she desired. And then finally, Allison Thomas, she participated in the first year as a mentee, as an undergraduate, and then decided to stay on for graduate school and joined my research group. And now she's a graduate student in my group, which is really awesome. And so it's just really nice to see all of these repeat participants, and we hope to see that a lot moving forward. But you can also see that there's a lot of new participants, which is also very exciting. The second year that we did this, we had all of the trios make a slide about themselves. So they introduced themselves to the larger cohort at the first meeting. And that was really fun. And I'm just going to flip through some of these. You'll get to see the diversity and makeup of these students and faculty and professionals. And their various roles and affiliations. So this one, for instance, it had the lead mentor was a PhD student at OSU, was a new participant. The mentee was actually someone that was in the professional world going to one of the branches of OSU, and the intermediate mentor was an undergraduate student. So you can see how just with this cohort, the roles aren't strictly based on your experience, or your age or your status. It's really a group that's going to work together to better each other. The next group is Jamie's group, and she had someone also from one of the branches of OSU, and then one of our participants from OU. And the thing I'll highlight here is that this was a student that participated in S3OK in the policy or social sciences. And so it was really interesting to get that perspective compared to some of the biology or engineering that we had from a lot of our other participants. This one was Cheyenne's group, and she had a couple students here from OSU. We had the people talk about one thing that they had in common, and so this one, they love to eat fish, which is also connected to water, and so that was a fun one. This was Nisha's group, and so, like I said, she got to be a lead mentor and mentor others, graduating from being an intermediate mentor. And I highlight her trio from last year just to show that continuation and furthered participation between years. This was my trio. I got to work with a student from OSU that's in a PhD program and determined that we have a lot in common in our research, even though we hadn't met before. So that was really fascinating. And then I also got to work with Brenda's undergraduate student who did the REU, and he was from Redlands Community College. And we found that he's also interested in microbiology. So that was like a very interesting connection. Hint, hint, I did make these trios, so I may have had something to do with that. But anyway, Brenda's group, she had one of my graduate students, Pravin, as mentee, and then she had one of the high school students, which was really great. And they all dislike chemistry, so that was a fun one as well. Okay, so we had various topics that we talked about at each of the large cohort Zoom meetings each week. Some of them repeated between years, and then some of them we added new or took out between years as well. So the one that stayed both years and is always the kickoff is talking about SMART goals and setting up our goals for the semester or the year, depending on the duration of the project. And we talk about how they need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And so trio members will set some goals, then go to this big cohort meeting and kind of see if their goals are SMART, and if not, adjust them and talk through them at the trio meetings. A lot of trios also, during their biweekly or monthly meeting, depending on the year, would also touch base on where they are with their goals throughout the time. And so it was nice to have that accountability partner, or trio in this case, to try to make sure that you're staying on top of those things and trying to attain your long and short-term goals. In the first year, we had a guest speaker on diversity and inclusion, and that was Dr. Jason Kirksey from OSU, and he talked about various programs like the OK LSAMP program, which is across multiple institutions, and we had representation from most of those institutions. And he talked about a few other opportunities that were at OSU. In the second year, we decided to make this a panel instead, and we opened it up to talk about not just diversity, but just how you get involved in research. And so actually, Dr. Bunting was one of our speakers in the first year, but we invited him to be in the panel along with a few other members. We had also reached out to some others, but they weren't able to participate. But this was a really cool one, and the participants loved it. So we had people come up with questions ahead of time, and we asked the panel, and they responded to those questions during the call. And that was a really great opportunity. And then the trio activity was just to talk about what resources they could look into and what their experience was and has been in either academic settings, professional settings, because we are all different in different ways. And then we also talked about resumes and CVs both years. The first year we had a guest speaker come in. The second year, Jamie and I decided to do it ourselves. So we talked about different services that they offer at OSU, but there are also similar services at other universities. That is an area we can expand in the future, is just trying to identify what those resources are outside of OSU so it can be more relevant. But the activity that students did was they prepared either a resume or a CV, depending on their career stage and goals, and then shared it with each other and kind of reviewed those to improve them. Another talk that we had was how to apply to graduate school. In retrospect, we probably should have had one for how to apply to undergraduates for some of those high schoolers that were participating, but they had actually already applied, so that was fine. But one of Jamie's mentees was actively applying to graduate school, and this talk came up, and he was like, wow, you guys timed this perfectly because this is exactly when I needed to do this. And he said that actually, as he was participating in the program, every time he had something he needed to do for his applications, the timing came up in our program where we talked about it, like making his resume, or how to navigate funding, and research opportunities and things like that. So that was really great feedback to have. Um, the first year, Jamie gave a talk on how to do a research poster, and that was awesome. It also prepared the students to give a research presentation at the in-person event, which Jamie will talk about here shortly. And then I gave a talk on how to give effective PowerPoint presentations, which is a talk that I give to my students a lot. And so I gave that to the program. And what Jamie and I decided for the second year was to lump those two conversations together and actually have our students present it, because we figured people in the program were getting a little tired of hearing from us. So we had two of our students that had participated in the first year of the mentorship program. Each talk, Maddie talked about posters, and Lizzie talked about oral or podium presentations. And then a new one that we added in the second year by request, and it was actually a fun one to develop, was how research takes shape. So we talked about how we plan for the research, how we get it funded, how we actually do it, which is the thing that most of the students were familiar with, and then how we talk about it with publications or just outreach, dissemination into the wider community. And so with that, I will mute and hand this over to Jamie, who's going to talk about the in-person event and then some of our other findings.
And Mary, you will still flip for me on the slides. Okay. Yeah. So I think maybe one of the most fun parts of the mentorship program is the in-person event. And so we have followed a pretty similar agenda for the two cohorts. As you can see by the dates, they both happen at the end of the spring semester, really like the last Friday of classes, just to try to give people the most flexibility. And we have held the in-person event at OSU, mostly just because of convenience for Mary and I to set this up, although we have talked about alternate locations moving forward, depending on the geographic spread of our participants. So far, it's really made a lot of sense to have it in Stillwater just because it is equidistant between Oklahoma City and Tulsa, where a lot of our participants have been centered. So, oh, can you go back just one, Mary? So the day we really just kind of start casually, a welcome presentation that's kind of similar to this one, and snacks. We've done some water bingo, which we'll get to in just a second. And then we've gone through the program overview flash talks. And this is really an opportunity for the mentors to share what they're excited about outside of the mentorship program. And we've done a lunch and a poster session both years. One thing that we that happened organically at the first cohort meeting was some of these reflections and reflections amongst different groups of people. So getting the mentors together and reflecting versus getting the trios together and reflecting that have a mentor, an intermediate mentor, and a mentee. So we intentionally put those on the agenda for the second year. And then we end the day with some photos and ice cream social, which is always a hit. So water bingo is what we do for our icebreaker. And at the time of sign up for the in-person event, we have every participant complete or tell us a fun fact about them. So Cheyenne said earlier, she has 6 huskies, which was also her fun fact. And everybody has to fill out a bingo card. And once they fill out that bingo card with every other participant, we put them into a drawing to win some prizes. But this really just starts the day with a lot of meaningful interactions, and it creates these conversations that maybe wouldn't happen if we were just saying our names around a table. At the end of the bingo cards or submission, we read off the fun facts and we let that person stand up and add anything else, which is always a really great time. Following that, we move into the flash talks from the mentors, and this has really ranged. As Mary said, our first year we had a lot of faculty mentors, and so these flash talks tended to be about their research or their education. This year, because our mentors were so varied, we also saw a huge variation in the topics, which was really nice. And we don't give any parameters. We just say, hey, do you want to do a 5-minute flash talk, something that you're excited about that the group could learn from? And so we have some of those sample talks. We had a PhD student serve as a mentor, Mary mentioned earlier, and what he shared was his takeaways from the research journey. This was very relatable for not only our undergrads, but also more junior grad students who are just starting. Talked a lot about how there are some things that you control and sometimes life doesn't go as expected. It was super relatable, very, very relevant. And it wasn't the typical research talk. So that was really great on the professional development side. Cheyenne has talked in the past about using citizen science within research. This is always a big hit, and Cheyenne got a lot of people excited about doing undergrad REUs when she was talking about her sampling. And this was Cheyenne year 2. This was more specifically about her crayfish. Everybody was really excited. This instrument from Australia that she brought up, everybody wants to go out and clean out some crayfish burrows and see what's in there. So it's really exciting, even for Mary and I, who are in the more traditional engineering space, just to see what other people are doing in the research areas within water in Oklahoma. So Nisha, she went from intermediate mentor to mentor, and as such, she progressed from a poster presentation the first year to a flash talk the second year. And she was just wrapping up her master's program, and she presented on her community engaged master planning for a pond restoration in Enid. Another graduate student who was serving as a mentor from Biosystems here at OSU, she was also presenting her master's research, which was developing a crop ET forecast tool for global use. And so again, this really timed out well. She was giving a seminar talk that afternoon, and so had a little practice, although it was maybe slightly abbreviated in the flash talk. Talking about soft skills, we think that these are very, very important presentations. And we were really glad to see that some of these were coming up. This is by our industry participant talking about refining soft skills, looking for different opportunities, and just taking advantage of leadership and networking opportunities. And this program was highlighted to provide both of those things. Brenda talks about her freshwater sponges. A lot of people didn't know that there were sponges. I certainly didn't, and a lot of the students didn't either. And she was talking about how we can all go sponge hunting together. And I think we were all very intrigued and excited about that. And Brenda, as Mary said, has been able to work with some undergraduate researchers on this type of work. And then tying all of these back to the grand challenges, this is something that Mary always tries to tie her work into and just make sure that our cohort is aware of what some of the grand challenges in engineering might be. And some of the ones that her work touches on being providing access to clean water, managing the nitrogen cycle, and also looking at carbon sequestration. And so this draws the students' attention to these more global themes and just brings it into their awareness on things that we can be working at and giving their research more context. And then I love any chance I get to talk about stormwater management. And so naturally, when I got to present, I talked about challenging current stormwater management strategies and looking at knowledge exchange, especially by community engaged research and various implementation strategies. One of the highlights of this event is the student poster session. Because this program is so approachable for the students, we try to empower them to get out and present and find these opportunities. We're naturally seeing this being a lot of students' first poster session or even the first one they've attended as an audience member. And so they're able to go and see how some of the skills that we talked about as a large cohort, how you can put together a poster presentation comes to fruition. So a lot of the undergrads are able to engage with some of the grad students who have been working on research. In a lot of cases, we have other undergraduate researchers presenting, and this brings it to light of, oh, if you can do this, I can certainly do this too. And so the poster session has been attended by external members too, different faculty who might not be in the cohort but want to come see what it's all about. And so we make this very open. It's a very casual session. There's no sort of competition. It's really just to say, hey, this is a place that you can really practice these skills. You can engage with people and just talk to other researchers who are excited about water in Oklahoma. And so, as Mary mentioned, Val really pushed us to collect some data, especially some reflections. And so, to this point, the reflections have been mostly qualitative. And so, we've had a lot of it at the in-person event where we facilitate these reflections and encourage participants to take notes and provide them back to us. So the first year we attempted to do this via like a Google Forms, but this year we actually had pens, papers, and asked everybody to write these down as they're brainstorming with these different groups. And so we've collected feedback according to the role. And so just looking at the lead mentors, we've picked a highlight from each of them, but we feel like the comments that we're providing here kind of sum up what the other comments are. And so a lead mentor here saying that the trios add a lot of value and we're all learning from each other in different ways. They really looked forward to each discussion that they got to have with their trio. They had a really tight-knit trio and they were hoping that others were able to communicate and feel similarly. Moving to the intermediate mentor, we had a comment that said, my favorite thing was the relationship that I was able to build with my lead mentor. And earlier, Colpo commented in the box, he was my intermediate mentor last year, and we had a really great time learning from each other and also mentoring our mentee, Aria, who was from UCO. And so I think that this intermediate mentor space gave these participants an opportunity both to show or have some leadership, share their experience with a mentee while also still learning and having a little less pressure on themselves than maybe a lead mentor would have assumed. And then the mentee, this was our favorite comment just because it really circles back or closes the loop on some of the goals that we had as a program, talking about the sense of community that they gained and feeling like they were capable of doing research, which was really that hits on all of the goals that we had for this program. So as I mentioned, this year we provided papers, pens, and just said, hey, during your reflection, jot down some notes. And so this is exactly what the paper looked like, with prompts of things to keep and things that maybe they'd like to see improve. And we asked for these improvements to be actionable. And so the things to keep that we saw across the two cohorts is that this trio structure, it's pretty unique, but it seems like people are really enjoying it, learning a lot and gaining a lot from one another's experience. This year it was commented and we took it to heart, especially from the people who participated in both cohorts, that the academic year program was more approachable. As Mary said, the first year it was very condensed, it was very compact, and it felt like we were doing mentorship all the time. And so the academic year program provided some time to digest the concepts, really put them into practice, and have these meaningful conversations. Now, there are some improvements we'll talk about in that space as well. And then we liked alternating between the cohort and the trio meetings. We were able to learn as a group, and it felt like we were still connected as one. However, when we were really doing the work, digesting and practicing some of the skills learned in the cohort sessions, we were able to do that through meaningful discussions and practice with our trios. Some improvements to make would just be to communicate the expectations a little bit better. Between both the first year, it felt like maybe it was quite a time commitment that people weren't necessarily prepared for, and so they fell off a little bit. And then the same thing this year, while we opened it up to high school students and we were really happy to have them participate, we're not sure if they were fully understanding what was expected of them and how that might fit into their class schedules and extracurriculars. So we want to improve retention, and to do that, we just want to make sure that we're communicating expectations. And really, this was just, one or two people each cohort, but it's hard when you have a trio of three and one person drops off. So we've had to do some shuffling this year, but I think we're going to work to improve that. We had a great time, including Lauren, who was our participant from outside of academia. We saw how much she brought into the program. She was able to organize some field experiences for her mentees. And so we just see that this is such a strength, and it provides a lot of networking for our participants, and gives them a pulse of where research goes into context. And so we want to make sure that we're inviting more mentors, really any participant outside of academia, but especially we see a lot of potential in that mentor role. The in-person event is always a highlight, and what we've heard both times that we've offered the in-person event is we need to do this more. It's so much fun to be together. We're learning so much from one another. And so Mary mentioned we've done a lot of matchmaking on the trio end of things, looking at people's interests, geographic spread, and trying to do some matchmaking. But it's really challenging, and you can't just look at a Google form and say, there's going to be chemistry here. We can just say, that well, maybe there is chemistry if they're all interested in chemistry. But other than that, we're not sure how personalities will fit. And so we've talked about doing an in-person kickoff event before trios are matched and doing like a speed dating and having people at least give us some idea of who they would be excited to be matched with through this program. Building on that, just doing some experiential learning or research days. I think when we were getting this started, it felt like a lot to bite off by trying to provide additional external opportunities. But what we're hearing from our mentors is that we have the bandwidth and we have the opportunities to be able to invite people to do some of this work with us. We can all go sponge hunting with Brenda or crayfish hunting with Cheyenne. And like I said, Lauren was able to arrange some water treatment plant tours for her trio group. And when we were thinking about this, Mary and I are saying, well, we go to the field. We could just send out a message and say, hey, we've got these research projects going on if you want to come along with and see what we do. So we hope to offer that in the next cohort. And then this year we did the academic year program, and we had once a month cohort meetings. So these professional development topics. And it was our thought or expectations that the trios would meet, I guess, in the middle of that month. So each month we'd have one trio meeting and one cohort meeting, but we left it up to the trios to schedule themselves. And what we were finding, even for me, is once that was left a little bit open, it felt harder to find common times for everybody. Sometimes they were forgotten about, months get really busy and then you're trying to squeeze that in right before the cohort meeting. So we were thinking once we do the academic year-long program the next time, we would set concrete meetings every 2 weeks for the cohorts. In one of those meetings, we would still do the professional development topic, and then in the other, we would set breakout rooms. So it would still be an every other week commitment, but we'd have it on the calendar. And we think that having these more concrete times would help with the accountability as well and probably make it easier for people. So our next steps, what does this look like? Well, we're very excited to be planning for our third cohort. And Mary left you, I'm sure, just sitting on the edge of your seat about what our news was. And it's that we're so excited that Cheyenne and Brenda are going to be helping us on the leadership side. Their continued participation has been so valued. And we've debriefed with both of them at the ends of the programs, and we just see, how much they can add. They give us geographic perspective. They give us perspective from outside of an R1 institution. They bring in a lot of great skills that Mary and I could certainly use and leverage. And so we're really excited that they're joining us to be leading this. And so we met after the in-person event, and we have scheduled our monthly coordination meetings, and just coincidentally, one of those is this afternoon. So we're really hitting the ground running on our third, planning for our third cohort. And some of the initial goals include starting this kickoff meeting, this in-person kickoff meeting, providing these experiential learning opportunities, asking the mentors to plan for at least one field trip or learning opportunity throughout the cohort's time, and then quantifying the impact. So we've talked about really looking at getting an IRB protocol, trying to survey so that we have some quantitative data to complement our qualitative data, and build this out, disseminate our experience and the impact through a manuscript, and making sure that we're getting this presented at things like conferences. Last year, Mary and I presented about the first cohort at the University Council on Water Resources. And so we see that there's a lot of we feel like we're making a big impact, and we think that there's a lot of potential for this program structure to expand to other places and other people to benefit. So we want to make sure that we're getting that out into the world. So our main takeaways is that we really feel like this mentorship program is making a difference. While this trio match happened just circumstantially, we think that it's really unique. We think that it's making a great impact. Again, I'll just tell everybody to read Culpo's comment because it makes me so proud. And you can see just from experience that we think people are benefiting from this, and that we are going to have, a better, more connected workforce moving forward as a result. Um, and we're really proud of the return participation and also just the increasing responsibility in the program. Mary highlighted, we had students move from mentees into intermediate mentors, into full lead mentors. We have Brenda and Cheyenne stepping up into leadership roles. So we feel like this program has really facilitated some of that leadership potential and natural sort of growth. Mary and I are happy to answer any questions now. We have plenty of time. Our emails are on the screen. I think we're connected with a lot of you. But if you are interested, or if you think you have somebody who might be, please share this interest form with them. Right now, we're just collecting names, emails, and affiliations. And once we have that kickoff meeting planned and a sign up sheet, we'll be using this interest form, the people from the interest form, to share it with. So thank you so much for having us today. This has been such a joy. I think a highlight of mine and Mary's early careers. And so we just really appreciate the opportunity through EPSCoR, and especially want to give a shout out to Val for helping us get started, and the continued support through S3OK led by Kevin. So thank you all so much.